Welcome. This is the podcast by Wake the Farm Up called Maintaining Ground. And I am your host, Andy the Elf. Wake the Farm Up. Yeah, we're back. It's exciting. It's good. Thanks, everybody. This is the 16th episode. I know, right? Come on. Yeah, this podcast, season 1, has been incredible. We're moving forward here, wrapping up season 1 in the next several episodes. We're going to new places. You guys are making this come alive. We're talking with old friends, new friends, and inspiring people that have their own opinion to share about the world and the way that it is for them. And we're relating in this farm theme with homesteading and taking care of ourselves and getting off the grid and creating our own sustenance and homesteading, all mixed into everyday lives of people that we know. All right, hope you enjoy this one. This is gonna be another pretty freaking farming special episode. Alright, everybody, we got Art Friedrich coming to you up from Miami, Florida. Come on, let's hear it for him.
I moved down here 11 years ago. Didn't really mean to, but kind of happened.
We've known each other probably, I want to say, since like 7 or 8 years old, years ago. This is Art Friedrich, and
hey.
Welcome.
Thanks. Yeah. I think we met in first grade. Went to grade school up
That's
until
amazing.
6th grade. Yeah.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and then we were at the same high school together too. So some of the things along the lines of Wake the Farm Up, which I'm fascinated by, how people I've known are doing things that are absolutely amazing. And so I'm curious to hear quite a bit about what you've been up to these years past, especially involving, my Wake the Farm Up theme around agriculture, food sourcing. You're down in Miami, Florida. Just to be clear, I know sometimes around here people think Miami, they're like, oh, Oxford.
But yeah, I've lived all over the United States, and also lived in Freiburg, Germany for a year.
Oh wow!
And I wasn't really into anything farming growing up, and I don't even think we had a garden growing up. We had a bunny that
you were in
to feed.
You were in a similar neighborhood as me, Winton Woods, which is a green belt community which had a lot of forest around. I think that's definitely was a big impact on my life growing up, having that access to creeks and forest trails and all that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was so blessed. My mom, she didn't want to live in the suburbs. She didn't want to live in the city. And she taught deep in the city, in downtown Cincinnati. But so we lived on a connecting road between suburbs. So we lived out on the edge of Winton Woods Park, which is one of the biggest parks around Cincinnati. And so my backyard sloped down about 200 feet into a creek. And so, that's what I grew up on, was going down the trail deep into the woods and just going cricket, going up and down the creek, catching crawdads, all that good stuff, walking over to my friend's house through the woods, who lived in the nearby suburbs. So I was certainly a big influence, but and she grew up farming in Cincinnati. My family is all moved there around 1900, 1910, all German, immigrants, and they had horses. They grew a lot of their own food. So, but that wasn't something that was really part of my upbringing. But my whole family's come back to it. My mom bought a farm up in New Hampshire about 18 years ago.
Wow.
And she was kind of inspired to do that by my middle sister, Jen, who you knew. She was running a cranberry farm in Rhode Island, and my whole family's wild. They've been everywhere. She was living in Alaska for 3 years, teaching in the middle of the Bering Strait. And so
That's awesome.
Coming back to the mainland, and so she bought a farm. My other sister, Amy, she moved up there, and they've been farming. So that really inspired me to get involved with agriculture.
What kind of things are they growing in New Hampshire? Like, I think of New Hampshire, I think forest and mountains.
Yeah, they're in the middle of the White Mountains. Really funny. There's a really cool community up there called D Acres that started about 10 miles away from us. And after we bought the farm, we were exploring some history with them. They were like, oh yeah, like everyone from this area vacated around 1900 to move to Ohio because the farming in New Hampshire was so bad and Ohio was like prime farmland. Right. So here's my family just like, oh, let's go
back.
A farm in the middle of New Hampshire. It's mostly been a hobby farm. I mean, they've raised a lot of animals, which has been, I think an interesting conversation because when they bought the farm, I was vegetarian. I went vegetarian when I was 16, inspired in high school, part of the environmental club at St. X.
Hey, I was there with you. I'm right along with Mr. Becker. And I was a vegetarian probably from I was 14 to, I don't know, my later 20s. Where I started
that's
dabbling.
about when I was too.
That's interesting. Share that journey. I don't hear that quite that often with somebody that I was that, close in tandem on life journey with.
Yeah, and my sister and I, I'd read Diet for a Small Planet, and then we went to go see Howard Lyman, who was the person that was really exposing mad cow disease and kind of the whole cover-up of that in the 90s. Yeah. And I was vegetarian then, and that inspired us to both go vegan, which my mom was just so opposed to. She was like, all right, I'm never cooking for you again. I was like, all right. And she was on vacation for a week. When she came back, all of our shelves had been reorganized in the pantry, and there was vegetarian on one shelf, vegan on the main shelf, and then like the other non-vegetarian stuff was like hidden way up in the top.
You guys are standing there with little signs that say "Occupy Mom's Kitchen."
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, but then I moved to St. Louis after that, after a few years, like being part of an anarchist community there, and I really saw a lot of kind of mental illness and depression, and we were pretty much all vegetarian and vegan, and I started to feel like that had there was some connection there.
Interesting.
And then I read a book, Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon.
Sure.
And that really inspired me to, think about the importance of farm animals to a farm and just to the environment of a holistic farm environment and just to nature, forests, like, none of them can exist without animals. And so I've really moved away from vegetarianism.
Is that when you went to Germany and found sausages and bone broth and sauerkraut?
That was part of it too, yeah. Because going to Germany, it was impossible to live there for a year.
I can imagine.
Vegan. I was still vegetarian, which was hard. A lot of meals were just really poor. All I ate was baked camembert with raspberry sauce on it. That was the only thing in a restaurant that was vegetarian.
Yeah.
But I got through it. After I was back for another, really a few more years. It was a few years I was in St. Louis before I finally started dabbling and eating meat again, and that was really inspired by the farm. We started raising chickens, started raising pigs, and to me, it's so important not to divide ourselves from the whole cycle of life of the predator-prey relationship. We are animals, and I feel like a lot of vegetarianism and veganism ideas really tries to separate us as if we're some kind of separate moral being, only this higher ethical thing, and really divides us from being animals. And to me,
definitely,
I really think we got to remember, we're animals too. And,
hey, that's the book
we
I'm
have
reading.
A different consciousness.
That's the book I'm reading right now. It just came out recently by David Abram, called Becoming Animal. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a pretty fascinating book. I definitely would look into that. I think you're tapping right into what he taps into. Yeah, he wrote it.
I actually have it. A friend of mine started a little free library where they just built a tiny little birdhouse looking thing on the front of her street, and I was dropping something off to her, and I looked at it, and I think I saw that book, and I picked it up and meant to read it, but I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, I read one of his other books, The Spell of the Sensuous, and it really goes into a lot of concepts of existence and language and how we communicate, how an insect can communicate to a tree, and like all these things are just as important, like kind of removing us from that human ego-centered existence, So I do a lot of these plant walks when people are like, what's this plant good for? And I try to bend people out of that, like, what can I get for it, for people to like how can you exist in this ecosystem as part of it, as opposed to coming in and extracting for your own benefit? Like what other connections are happening here?
And I'm also I run farmers markets now. My main thing is I run a nonprofit called Urban Oasis Project, and that's just to get people to eat more fruits and vegetables, to support small farms. And one question we get all the time, people asking these really specific, what are the nutrients in this piece of fruit, or is this piece of fruit good for you? And I'm just like, we got to quit breaking everything down to these simplified single ingredients like vitamin C, vitamin D, and it's it's a whole piece of fruit. It's going to be good for you. Eat it. It's going to be good for you. It can't really break down which ones are best for you.
Bananas have potassium.
You gotta eat them all.
I'm gonna eat some potassium in the shape of a banana.
Go back to the vegetarian thing.
Let's go there.
It's super important for people to, that people do really need to experience that, do that for at least a year of their life, and get out of kind of this way that we're solely programmed to only see a meal as complete if it has meat. We do need to super reduce the amount of meat and recognize factory farming and the horrors of our modern meat production. Spend more money on far fewer meat that's raised well, and eat it in moderation, because it is very damaging to the climate and just to the environment, and also to people and animals to
for sure
having these horrible factory farms. So I do totally promote, I focus my message on promoting fruits and vegetables, and I sell some locally raised grass-fed meats, and I teach people how to kill animals, because that's a really amazing experience. And when I moved here to Miami, there was a farm that had urban farm sanctuary in the middle of Miami, and they had bought all these turkeys. They thought they'd be really cute to have 30 turkeys running around until they realized how dumb they are, how dirty they are, and how much 30 turkeys will take over 1 acre of land in the city and just completely make it a dreadful place for other creatures. And so they wanted to get rid of them. I wanted to teach people how to kill some birds, so we had a Thanksgiving workshop, and all these vegetarian parents brought their kids. They wanted to traumatize them into never eating meat for life. And it was funny because the kids loved it. They wanted to be a part of it. They saw this whole process and the way that I did it, and the way that I did it with care, and how the birds reacted to it. And just kind of, they were still in tune with life is a cycle, and things live and die, and things have to die for us to eat, and they were all into it.
Right. I think when I was starting to dabble in eating meats again, it was, I had several years go, just an interesting thing of 3 years where I was just eating raw food, mostly vegan, but I was eating honey, so the vegans didn't let me in their club.
Honey.
But that's what I was eating. I feel again, like you mentioned, trying that kind of thing for a year or two, I definitely felt a purge and cleansed myself of all the junk foods I ate as a kid, like McDonald's or something, these fast food factory foods going in me. So,
oh my god, my diet as a teenager was so horrible.
same. I mean,
that's
just
what. But I probably drank 3 liters of Mountain Dew every day for like the entirety of our high school experience.
I think that was a staple in that part of the world at that time for boys our age running around. Like, you drink a liter of Mountain Dew and you're just ready to go and laughing at everything.
Yeah, that was to get me to first period. And then another one at lunch and another one on the way home.
Good old Mountain Dew. Man. And then, so then when I started dabbling with meats, I was really I had read a lot of the Shawnee culture, and there was a large amount of the Shawnee that would not eat the pioneers' meats. They thought it was weird to eat something that was fenced in and made people work for them every day. They only wanted to eat wild, like, animals that ran with a free spirit. I kind of got into that concept and have connected with a lot of hunters and was able to make my own deer jerky. I've had pancakes made with bear fat, just like the way it felt to me felt good, and I was like actually experiencing getting high from that, from having that nutrient density coming into my body. And so I experimented with other things. I remember being at a potluck and the guy had what he called 100% grass-fed beef.
You should
and
try it. Come
he
on.
was trying to get me to try it. He said he didn't put any herbs or spices in it. He wanted everybody to be able to try it just how it is. So I thought that was pretty special. So I tried it. And I've eaten a lot of plants, I forage and know what a lot of things taste like. And I bit into that 100% grass-fed beef, and it tasted like clover to me. And I had to call him out on that. I was like, it tastes like clover. And he was like, yeah, well, they eat clover. And I'm like, okay, well, then it's not 100% grass-fed. Clover's not a grass. I was just having fun. We were all laughing about it. I get it. It's like we put these names on things like 100% grass-fed, or I'm a vegetarian, or I'm a this.
Optimistic.
Or this is a
Cajun.
grown this way kind of thing.
Cage-free.
So I don't know, just with my sense of humor now, when people ask me what kind of diet I have, I like to say I'm a pedestrian. Or something like that, it just throws them off a little bit. I want to be free to eat whatever I want at this point.
Farm you.
And I want to be free to not eat what I don't want to. Just learning your body and kind of guiding it and looking at what's really out there. I think that, like the confined animals, and then you get this, like, if you're eating just that kind of meat, you're going to start having that kind of mentality. I remember when I was doing the raw food thing, a lot of my friends were buying tropical fruits where I was eating local wild raw food, and I would go to sleep at night dreaming about local wilds where they would tell me about their dreams of going to tropical places. I thought it's interesting how that fuses into you.
Yeah, well, I never dreamed of it, but here I am eating tropical fruits every day.
I bet.
I just chowed down some papaya from the yard, but Miami's interesting because it's so part of the culture here to have fruit trees everywhere. So mangoes, you just see them everywhere around the urban environment, and avocados are pretty much everywhere too.
Coconuts too, right? Or they come up.
Coconuts, but
come up
they're
from the
harder
Keys
to
more,
harvest for most people, so they don't get harvested as much. But yeah, tons of them just get thrown away. They're just decoration in people's landscape. There's a lot of actually decorative things that people grow as decoration. They don't even eat them, and they're delicious. Like loquats are amazing. They're like, kind of like a peach with a little bit of more tartness to them.
Yeah.
And people just grow them as decoration and don't eat them. And then
That's it's crazy. I have some loquats growing in my greenhouse in Indiana, and I just harvested my first fruits this winter, and they are so freaking good. I can't imagine just walking past them.
I need to be fly.
Like, what spoiled people would do that?
Yeah, they don't even know. It's crazy. And like our hedges, people grow Barbados cherries, and they're kind of like...
That sounds like pirate shit.
Yeah, they're kind of like that. They're like... They're little red globes, kind of spiky looking, but they taste somewhere between a cross between a cherry and a tomato. Like they have like a much more vegetal kind of taste to them. And when their bushes are in fruit, I mean, there's just tons of them.
That's awesome.
Just chow down as you take your walk. I mean, I'll like be riding my bike and just grab some off the bushes as I ride by and throw in my mouth. Spit seeds out at cars as I go by.
Tink, tink. Well, yeah. That's so cool. What other fruits do you guys bring to the market that are kind of experimental or less commonly known?
Yeah, I mean, we're our own zone in the United States, Zone 10B, so we can grow some. We're like officially subtropical, so we grow a lot of tropicals, but every once in a while we have a really cold winter and they'll get pretty damaged. But I mean, what do we got now? We got Maul sapote. There's a whole family. It's a whole family related to the persimmons. Maul sapote, black sapote, white sapote, canistel, egg fruit. Star fruits are in the citrus family. Nice. Of course, the oranges and grapefruits, which I'm not really even into. I don't know. To me, they're just so stereotypically Florida that I'm not even interested in promoting them. But I eat them every once in a while, and I carry them sometimes.
Do you ever come across...
Monstera delicioso is a really interesting fruit. And again, it's something people grow all over as an ornamental. It's in the philodendron family. So people probably grow like very miniature kind of ones as houseplants up there in Ohio. Yeah. And they look like they have flowers that look like a spathiphyllum, a peace lily, and that thing will turn into a 12-inch long green hexagon scaled looking corn on the cob kind of thing.
Whoa.
Shape. Very phallic. And then when you harvest it after 6 months, once it starts to droop a little bit, you harvest it and then you put it upside down in a bowl. And the scales, after like 2-3 days, will start peeling themselves off. And you have to wait for it to peel itself, because if you peel it, it's going to be like eating styrofoam fiberglass insulation.
Ooh.
And so, because it has tons of silicone in it, but it has to have this like ripening reaction to make it palatable. And then it tastes like jackfruit, which is really delicious, and it's kind of like a pineapple banana kind of flavor. And you can't eat the whole fruit in one day because it has to peel itself. So the first day you can eat like an inch or two, the second day you can eat an inch or two. So it's super fun fruit, and
that's so cool.
Really interesting, very different kind of
Stellar Dioso
profile.
Stellar Dioso.
Monstera delicioso.
Monstera delicioso. Monstera,
yeah, the delicious
delicioso.
monster.
That's amazing. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
So, but yeah, jackfruit is something I've been super into since I moved down here, because it's one of those fruits that is really being explored and promoted as a way to feed the world, because it grows in really poor soils, has no trouble. You can grow it in 3 to 5 years, a tree that'll be like 25-30 feet tall, and it'll start producing fruit after like 3 to 5 years, especially if you do a trick where you plant 3 seeds about 12 inches apart in a triangle and then weave them together after a year. Wow. They'll fuse into one tree and they'll produce fruit 2 years faster.
Well, yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so the jackfruit, I mean, they're the biggest fruit in the world. They can get up to 120 pounds each. And they grow right off the trunk of the tree usually. And they look like these big, spiny, green dinosaur eggs.
So
and,
are the
I tell kids that all the time, that they're dragon eggs.
Right. Are the jackfruits officially bigger than durian fruit?
Yeah, I think they can get bigger than durian.
They can get bigger,
They're very similar. They're pretty closely related, I believe. I've never actually had durian. It doesn't really grow here, which is weird. The jackfruit does great. But yeah, no one's really growing durian here, but people ask me all the time if it's durian, and it's like, nope, it's not durian. This one doesn't smell anywhere near that bad.
Well, I know I go to the international market occasionally and get a durian fruit. So
yeah,
they're frozen though. It's not quite the same.
It's fun to get to like to explore all these different fruits and vegetables. I love doing that. And it's amazing that after 10 years here of running these farmers markets where I'm buying from every local farm that I can find around here, and even like small home growers and people selling to me out of their yards, I still sometimes get to try brand new fruits that I've never had before. I mean, there's so much diversity that, like we don't even begin to touch the number of edible plants that are available to us, and we certainly haven't, gotten around to marketing them anywhere near, to really explore the full diversity of everything that's available to us to eat and to have a relationship with.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere recently that there's over 300,000 edible plants on our planet. Edible or medicinal. I mean, that's one way to eat something in small amounts, I guess. But that's quite a lot.
Yeah, and typically in a grocery store you might see 60 or 80. Like
right.
That's how many have been, kind of pushed into the commercial food system.
I think the standard American diet has like 20 plants that people commonly eat. So I often think about that when I'm foraging and I eat 25 different plants on a hike, just how I've put myself above average.
Yeah, I mean, I get so much joy out of like sharing all that exploration and pushing people out of their boundaries. I mean, so, so we knew each other in grade school, and part of the reason, I left our grade school because I did not fit in. I was a nerd, I was a grade school that was totally dominated by the jocks, and they just like gave me hell. And, I already knew by 6th grade that I was queer.
Okay. I didn't know that until high school. I knew that you were very open about that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know. I knew it, but didn't totally, I didn't have names for it. It wasn't until 8th grade that I really began to have a name for it, when I had moved to this other grade school. And it was, kind of a terrible way to come up to get a name for it. But, like there was the school I went to, I had some friends that's why I moved there. And
cool.
And it was a really small school that wasn't dominated by the jocks. It was like a much more, I don't know, really different social environment where, at the grade school we went to, it was like if you weren't a jock, like there was this.
Yeah, let's go on recess, time to play football.
Yeah, it was definitely like the social hierarchy, and they were at the top, and this other school wasn't like that. But there was like 2 people who thought they were cooler than everyone else because they were jocks, but they weren't. And like, I had a group of friends at this other school, and so, but one of them started like hitting me every day in 8th grade and calling me a faggot. What the fuck? And, I was pretty tough at that time, and so I just told him to hit me as hard as he could, and, would just be like, yeah, I am.
Swell, yeah!
And that was the way that I first had a name for my sexuality, and, just had decided that,
the name being faggot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I didn't accept any of the shame that he was trying to impart with that. Yeah. And, that's just something that
was the 90s, too.
It always came naturally to me that I was like, I'm not going to accept the way that people are going to try to shame me for who I am. And, I've tried to share that with people, that
I've always admired
that's
that.
Such a core part of life is just accepting who we are ourselves and not feeling ashamed of that. And, we went on in high school with friends of mine, and we created our band Maul and just decided to it was all about being as weird as we could be.
I just watched the whole concert from 2014 that you had sent me recently. I mean, like I literally I turned it on and I was like, I'm gonna play this whole freaking show. And I did. I enjoyed every bit of it. There's parts that made me laugh. There was parts that made me dance a little bit while I was doing things. And it felt very nostalgic, even though that was a show from 2014. It brought a lot of nostalgia of experiences that you and I shared at different times in the 90s, like, little punk rock concerts in people's parents' basements or whatever. Like, I mean, it's fascinating times, and like you guys were able to keep that going into 2014 and bring that kind of
we're
energy.
still playing. We got a show coming up in September.
I love that. I love that.
You know, like
I hope I don't miss it. I want to see that.
It's gonna be our high school 25th reunion, and I was like, hey, like, let's do a show. Like, this is what our high school experience was all about, was like playing these ridiculous shows and just having fun. So let's have a show and see who shows up, like see if anyone's coming back for this reunion anyways. I don't know, but we've been trying to get together for a show for a while, but in December we were supposed to play, but I got COVID, so had to cancel my trip, and everyone else was afraid to go out anyways, and then the opening band also got COVID, so it was a good thing we canceled it. But so we're gonna try to get it together for this September and do a show.
Yeah.
But,
so all the listeners kind of get an idea of what Maul is. Art has described it to me recently as homo-erotic psychedelic punk rock.
All right, let's check out a little bit of this mayhem. This is Maul.
Yeah, that's Art going rice.
Yeah,
I love that.
Came up with that as our specific genre, Get into like really the minutia genre. I think it's hilarious. Everything we do is tongue in cheek. We were some kind of, people would be like, "Oh, what kind of music do you play?" I'd be like, "I don't know. It's some kind of cross between the Hippie Giants and Fish and Metallica and a little bit of Moby." Like everyone in the band was coming from a completely different musical genre as like what they mainly listened to. And so it was a really fun mashup. And none of us knew how to play instruments. We added a few people that knew how to play instruments, but we had been part of Junior Achievement. That's how we got started. We started off as a German a cappella death metal band. And we decided that making birdhouses to sell in Junior Achievement as our money-making scheme was just kind of silly and a waste of time. We could just get a karaoke machine, make some terrible songs, and sell tapes of that. And we fueled our Mountain Dew and French fry passion for months by selling these horrible tapes to people.
That's awesome. I wish I still had one, but I know all my tape collections went up in a fire. So,
oh man, that's rough.
Yeah. I had a school bus with everything in it, and somebody lit it on fire.
Oh no!
It was a big purge. All I had was a backpack and a Mercedes Benz that ran on vegetable oil after that.
Oh wow!
But somehow years later, I have a homestead and all this stuff again, and it's just crazy how the world turns around.
Yeah, you've done amazing things. I mean, I love checking out your Instagram and your blog and stuff. And I love that the way that you're spreading the love for herbs and plants and kind of natural living. And I've still got some tea that I got from you a few years ago that I've been very slowly every once in a while drink a little of the Ohio Valley tea.
The whole Ohio Valley blend, that's awesome, right? That's like spice bush and white pine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And some goldenrod.
Yeah, I've been out of the farmers market direct and more in the helping other people get into the farmers market, so helping produce producers. So that's been fun.
Yeah, that's so important because it's so hard for people to, make a living farming. It's such a underappreciated part of, our economy. Farm workers on the big farms are so underpaid and exploited. They're often immigrants, whether they're documented or undocumented, but either way, they have so few protections and so few rights, and the pay is just so dismal. I mean, sometimes when I see, I'm very actually mainstream now. Like, I really live in the mainstream world. I'm like, feel like I'm always kind of bridging, kind of an alternative consciousness, an outsider's consciousness with kind of mainstream culture, and trying to, because to me, I really want to push that mainstream to, actually embrace small businesses. Both political parties talk about that small businesses are the core of our economy, but they both really have very little support. I mean, they both are really like promoting, big business all the time. Like, and so that's why we started our nonprofit, was to just really support small farmers, but also to get to really change the face of the local food movement, which I feel like in the 90s and the 2000s had really unfairly become much more upper class, much more white, much more elite. There was some good people like doing things, and they were doing good things, but it dominated too much because of where they came from. Like the Michael Pollan and Alice Waters and the whole Berkeley local food movement. There's a lot of good things to it, but it was also ended up being exclusive, and also government policy really destroyed local farmers markets, because in 1993, SNAP benefits were food stamps. They were actual physical things that people could take to farmers markets. And they did. A huge part of those those food stamps were redeemed at farmers markets. So that was money going directly from poor people to small local farmers. In 1993, before cell phones and the whole digital world had really, and the internet was really a thing, they changed that all to the electronics benefits card, and you had to have a landline to be able to redeem those benefits. So from one year to the next, billions of dollars of food stamps was taken out of the farmers market economy, and just had to go to grocery stores, to big box stores mainly, because that was the things most accessible to them, and all that money no longer went to small farms. So we've been part of this movement to bring food stamps back into the farmers markets. Really make farmers markets very consciously a place for people of color, for low-income people, for elderly people, and a place, like that we really explicitly, make it, recognize all the interweaving ways that societal oppression is happening, and to try to counteract that as well.
I think it's a big thing too when you're able to present people with food at the market, and then they might use their SNAP card and purchase it, like some loquats, but then they're walking down the road and they start seeing them everywhere, and they start realizing how much food that is available to them, and then we can kind of even help more people turn the economic system off and just turn the economic system on to the natural systems that are growing around us already.
Absolutely. So that was really the way we got started. Before we started doing farmers markets here in Miami, we first had potlucks to get people together and share what they'd grown in their gardens. And that kind of started us creating a little network and a movement and community. And then we started planting gardens with people for free. And we were doing that in a really low-income area called Liberty City of Miami. And actually one of the Grand Theft Autos was named and designed after that area.
So you're like going through planting.
Oh yeah, so like we're taking like a bunch of, I'm white. Most of the original people that started Urban Oasis were white, so of course we attracted more white people, but we're bringing them into this neighborhood that's mostly all black and planting gardens with the families, and a lot of them had never actually gone into that neighborhood before, so it was a real eye-opening experience for them. And but we've really expanded and changed and broadened, but so then the community was like, the gardens are great, but we need more access. Planting a garden with a family, it's very, very it's high impact on a small number of people. And so we wanted to combine that with the lower impact of a farmer's market on a much broader amount of people. So we started our first farmers market in Liberty City, at the request of the community, because they liked what we were doing, building gardens with people. And like today, this year we built 100 gardens. One of our staff, she is Trinidadian, and she's been with us for 5 years. So she has taken over the program in the last year and just really wanted to make that her focus. So she goes, like last week, she built a garden with a nonprofit that is providing a house for kids that have just come out of the foster care system. So they're 18 to 24, they've kind of been thrown around house to house all their lives. And then this is like in a program to give them some adult skills. So they wanted to explore like having a garden. So she went in, built a garden with them, and just talked with them about like their relationship to food and how that could change and what that looks like. Because we really want to connect people with their heritage and our culture. Like, it's like, so much of our food only really dates back to the 50s. This commercial food, this processed food, the packaged food. Before that, like, we all have these rich heritages, ethnic heritages. We all have these foods that we connect with, and then that's universal. Everyone has that. Every culture thinks that their relationship to food is super special, but really, like, all of us, food is just about the biggest part of our culture. Yeah. And so reconnecting with that and like the natural aspects of that, it's something we've been so divorced from over the last 50, 70 years, and we need to consciously reconnect with, because it's something that we can't go without. Really is taking a hit in the kind of capitalist consumerist system. And to me, like, I've always been super anti-consumer, and so reconnecting with ways to get to do things outside of a consumer system is just so exciting.
Yeah, help turn consumers into producers, and then you got a better balance there. I like that concept and that work you're doing. That's amazing. I think along the lines of like food culture, we're definitely in this, the classic old term melting pot of cultures and foods, and combining things that the world has never seen combined. I know in my gardens I have plants from all the different continents, and we're able to harvest those things, bring them into the kitchen, and come up with new combinations of foods that perhaps people didn't have in the past. And you guys down in Miami, I think that's amazing what you can do with communities where you're making gardens that can produce food all year long. It doesn't go to sleep like it does up in the deciduous forests up north.
Yeah, we have our challenges too. Like, right now our season's about to end, our main season. So the garden we planted last week, like, it's a bunch of like weird summer, herbs, but not a lot of vegetables. Like, a lot of those won't grow in the summer. It's too hot. There's too much sun. Our sun, every minute, we get 2.1 times the amount of sunlight per minute as you're going to be getting up there. Right. So it's too hot. Like, things can't keep up. Even if they're well watered, like, they can't keep up with respiration and transpiration. So they just wilt, even if you're like watering them all day long. I guess. And then we don't have good soil because there's so much heat and humidity. Our soil, our organic matter breaks down so quickly. Yeah. And so it just turns back into sand so quickly. So you really have to be on top of adding organic matter, like collecting yard waste, putting things back into the soil.
I guess then you have disease vectors that don't die from freezes and things of that nature, bugs, and nematodes.
The funguses, the nematodes, those, we're also, Port of Miami is really huge, so we're also ground zero for just about every invasive species that comes into the United States. So, like, nematodes didn't really used to be a big thing, but it's completely wiped out some crops. Like, it's super hard to grow okra, and you can't hardly do it organically here because the nematodes just eat the roots to death, instantly. They'll look beautiful right before they're about to produce, and all of a sudden your plant's just leaned over the next day and flopped down with no root system left. And also killed off like crops that we're popular, like chayote, also very susceptible to nematodes. It's almost like you call it almost like a vine zucchini type of plant.
Yeah.
Tastes like a little bit like a green apple though. But yeah, it's so susceptible to nematodes, we can't hardly get it to grow anywhere anymore. Yeah, and then different bugs. Every couple of years, we have a big scare. We have to have a big like eradication campaign for this or that. Giant African land snails that can get up to like a foot long, and we're invading for a while. And we got laurel wilt is killing off avocado groves, and we had citrus greening, which was really crazy in the late '90s, mid '90s. And, this went into lots of difficult government policy decisions, but they had the whole huge citrus commercial industry in Florida, of course. Oranges, sun-kissed, Valencia oranges, all that. And citrus greening started affecting the citrus crops. So they came through and eradicated. They decided to try to protect their commercial growers. They chopped down every citrus tree in Miami-Dade County, Broward County, West Palm Beach County. And, it was a huge hit. So many people had so many citrus trees, and that was part of their diet because it was local, it was in their yard, and they loved it. And, nutritious. And they were all just forcibly eliminated. And we still have citrus greening. It didn't work, but they didn't allow any citrus to be replanted until just a few years ago. So I still get questions, like, can we even grow fruit in our yard? I said, yes, you can definitely grow anything. And, as of a few years ago, you can also plant citrus again.
How do the mangoes do there? I know you mentioned mangoes.
Oh, amazing.
They can turn into pretty good sized trees there.
Yeah, there's lots of different varieties. You just got to pick the kinds you want, whether you want, a balcony mango that'll stay 8 to 10 feet. You can grow it in a pot. You can get a small size tree that'll stay like 12 to 15 feet. Or you can go really super full-size wild mangoes that'll be 30, 40 feet tall. That's about as high as trees get here.
Yeah.
We have a very short landscape. That's what's really different when I go up north, like how tall the trees are. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, here nothing goes over like 30 or 40 feet.
Well, years ago...
It sounds like a lot, but really isn't very tall when you think about a tree. Like, it's nothing.
Something that was mind-blowing for me. So years ago in my 20s, I did some direct action tree sitting out in Oregon. And I was up in a tree whose crown was at about 300 feet.
Wow, yeah.
And, of course, in my 20s, I didn't think about it. I was like, yeah, this is a tall tree. But years later, thinking about it, that's like a 35, 40-story building?
Yeah.
It's pretty high.
It's pretty incredible, yeah. It's how big those natural beasts can be.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'm so glad that that was a successful campaign, and those trees are still there. They're about 1,000 years old. I won't give too much more information on that right now. But other than that, it was a successful. So yeah, there's been, a lot of fun things with growing stuff. Like, I'm curious too, what was the other tree? Like date palms. Do date palms grow in the Miami area?
They do. They don't do great. So,
okay.
They really like a Mediterranean climate, which is a little bit the opposite of ours.
Okay.
They like cool and damp and warm and dry. Go in between those two. Right. Whereas we have warm and wet and cool and still pretty wet, but kind of dry. We never get too low down on the humidity down here. So they do grow a little bit, and figs, but they don't do great.
How about I wanted to ask, like, the saw palmettos. Are they growing?
They're
pretty hardy there.
Yeah, I think that's our state plant, is saw palmetto.
I know they're pretty gone after for the saw palmetto berries are one of the best herbs for men's prostates. And it's one of the only areas of the world that they grow in that quantity. So I know they're kind of watched and like I remember parts of Florida I've been to. I've seen signs that say "Don't harvest the saw palmetto berries" or things of that nature. Where I'm just curious, like, is that something that you see in markets, like people harvesting and selling that, or is it mainly just going to big distributors?
Yeah, what up?
I've never seen them locally. I've never heard of anyone trying to bring them to a market. Got a few friends that have been much more into the kind of herbalism and running an herbal apothecary. So, that's something I'll have to ask them about. But I haven't been super involved with that part of things.
'Cause I have found it harder. It's one of the items that would be harder to source directly from a farm. I've only, on the internet anyway. So it's an interesting concept to think about. I always think about each region having their little niches. Like along the coast, there's dollar weed and it tastes good and it's edible and you can't grow it inland. So it's like, it seems like that could be something cultivated on the coast and turned into a resource that could be, bioregionally traded and offered and shared, whereas it's nice to grow everything yourself, but it's really kind of cool to be able to cultivate and care for those certain niches that your bioregion can produce.
Yeah, for sure. That's something I love about running the farmers markets, is having seen so many different people making these different artisan foods and using different local products and bringing them to the market. And it was really a new kind of thing here in Miami. I mean, we started the farmers markets partially because, like, when I moved here, I couldn't find anything local to eat, like, especially that I could buy from a market. I mean, I started exploring some of the weeds right away, and things like the name is escaping me at the moment. I can picture the little white flowers, but great little weed to eat. It grows everywhere, in the yards and stuff. And so I started eating those right away. But it's just so hard to find any actual local food. So that was part of why we got into trying to create spaces where small producers, small farmers, and just small food artisans, people that are really exploring food, could have a place to meet people and build community and share information. So it's some
learn
really cool
and
projects
grow
that are happening here that have grown up in the last few years. Like, so this woman that worked for me, Corinne, she does Miami Seed Share. So she just wild harvests things and also grows traditional vegetable plants, but saves the seeds and puts them into little recycled paper seed packets, and it's all there's no money involved, and it's gotten really big. She's gotten into libraries, the actual public library system. We found some friends in, and they've brought it into, you can check the seeds out from the public library, and then you're supposed to return them at some point. So you grow your stuff and you save some seed from it and give it back into the system for other people to use for free. And then there's another farm project that's kind of urban homestead farm project called Finca Morada, which is a really queer-centric and people of color-centric, just house kind of with a living collective and a farm, doing great educational and free workshops, for people in the community, as well as downtown Miami and Overtown. The Greenhaven Project, doing really cool things, just building community, getting people eating stuff, getting people's hands in the dirt, and just spreading some love for soil.
I have a question on the side of the queer culture. I know Florida has been in the news quite a bit lately about voting out, being allowed to use the word gay.
Yeah, so
what's that all
the
about?
Don't Say Gay bill passed recently. I mean, it's wild. I mean, there's some areas of Florida are so progressive and some are so queer and queer friendly, and then so much of Florida is not. And we've had a really reactionary, right-wing, Republican-dominated legislature and governor for a while now. So,
for me, it doesn't make me want to do anything except, say gay as much as I possibly can.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's gonna be interesting. It's good to see that wild reaction. Like you suppress something wild, you try to eradicate something wild, and then we're gonna watch how much it also makes it flourish.
Right.
So yeah,
that's what I remember liking about George W. Bush. I remember some of his policies he was playing in really stirred up a lot of activism in the opposite direction of his policies, which helped turn the world a little different way. Strange way things go. I live in a fairly rural area in the Midwest, but I spend time in urban areas, and sometimes I'm the most conservative person somebody's ever met, and other times I'm the most liberal. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I identified strongly as an anarchist for a while in my 20s when I was living in St. Louis, and even started an anarchist community center with a bunch of people, but there was also two really different strains of anarchist thought that I could see in our community there. And one was kind of the idea that just people need to be directly engaged in the decisions that affect them. And to me, one of the most influential things that people said was what this means is we're creating the alternative institutions that we need to see in the world that need to exist for a just world to exist. And to me, that was the core kind of anarchist thought that called to me. Whereas some of the people that was around were just simply protest anarchists, just wanted to burn down the capitalist system, just wanted to start fights and riots and stuff, and I couldn't identify with that at all.
Yeah, I get the Adbusters magazine still, and I feel like I like receiving that information and that perspective, but they don't give enough time to what you could do to rebuild something. There's more of the this is bad kind of concept.
Yeah.
I think
and
that's
what I
something
love about Yes Magazine is kind of the counter to that, super anarchist, super independent thinking, but so focused on what are solutions, what are people doing positively to create solutions.
I like that. Yes. Yeah, I think for me that was definitely something in my early 20s, coming across permaculture in 1998. Random first class I took totally spun me, took me from that angry side of me, angry at the world, my dad being an atmospheric scientist. I've heard about climate change before it was called global warming, and just what's going on, know this, know that, to being hey, there's some things I can say yes to, this magazine you're talking about. So that's fun I'm gonna look into that one, see what else there's.
I never knew that about your dad.
Oh yeah. So he helped me defuse some of the chemtrail theories that I've heard from people, and there's a lot there. But
I mean, I feel like there's such a plague of disinformation and misinformation on all sides. And to me, it can be I'm really into following my intuition, but I also recognize that our intuition also has to be informed by outside knowledge and outside experts, people that are really going into things more and more scientifically as well. So I'm super into following intuition, but I also see that really abused sometimes too, and it just means people just don't listen to anything outside of their own. They can't challenge their own preconceived stereotypes and notions I think sometimes people, like you said, this preconceived notion. I overheard a conversation recently where somebody told me that their friend got into flat Earth ideas, and now they can't be friends with that person anymore. They have a hard time with it. I'm why is that such a hard time for you? Why does it matter if that person thinks the Earth is flat? And I mean, I know a lot of people that think the Earth is flat, and I really don't care. To me, it could be, I always say it could be the back of a turtle. For all I care, I could still be friends with you. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of these issues that become
judgmental things and friction between people when they really don't even have to. If people could just like learn a little bit more of acceptance, like, oh, okay, hey, you think the world's flat like a pizza, cool. I don't think that, but let's talk about flowers that are coming up right now or something, you know. It's like, but I think that's what happens is people get stuck on these things and they just want to keep going into it. But hey, I know we probably need to wrap up fairly soon, but I did want to touch upon a couple more like funny aspects. So, you know, first of all, like you were mentioning earlier, you know, about, you know, us knowing each other through grade school and some of the challenges that you were dealing with and how you want to encourage people to be themselves. So that kind of like came back to that from what we were just talking about. I mean, just something I'll tell you, you know, in grade school when we were kids, I was really into art. I was a very artsy kid. You had the name Art. I was always envious of that. I was like, wow, this guy's name is Art. That's freaking cool. But you know, going
like I didn't really consider myself into art, and like people thought it was super weird, and and I still get it, like, oh, like
you should
so
be
different.
into art, man.
And like you renamed yourself Art, and it's like, no, like I'm actually just named Art. Like,
right.
I'm just different, but that's just me. Like.
So one of the funny things about my name. So my full, you know, main name and my middle name is Andrew Christian, which turns out, you know, to be one of the more famous like gay underwear lines. And maybe I'll get them to like be one of my sponsors for this podcast someday. I don't know, but I wear their underwear. I think it's freaking great. It's underwear with my name on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, now that we're talking about me and my underwear, I feel like I can ask you about your burlesque show.
Oh yeah, so I mean, in St. Louis, as part of this anarchist community, we, you know, a bunch of the women friends of mine started a burlesque show called Bench Press Burlesque, and I was kind of dabbling a little bit with DJing, and I did that in high school too. Caused quite a ruckus in high school with some DJ shows I did there in our high school. But so yeah, they were getting together and they'd put together this kind of punk DIY anarchist burlesque show, very feminist, very queer, super queer friendly, trans friendly, so yeah, they had put it all together and they were like, hey, like we actually, you know, it had been an open call, but I didn't apply to be part of it. I was intrigued, but I was like, I don't want to be like the guy like applying to be part of this women's thing. And then, but we were all friends, and so they came to me, they're like, hey, like you like have sound equipment, like do you want to like kind of run our sound a little bit? I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. I'd love to be part of it. So I went to like their first kind of putting the whole show together. Put me in this really weird space where it was like, oh, I'm the only person that has seen the show from the outside. Mm-hmm. And so I was giving them some feedback about different things that were working and didn't working, which was super awkward because I'm like, I totally don't want to be the guy telling all these women how to change their thing, but I'm also the only person that's seen the show from the outside. And so they were super receptive. But then like after the next kind of putting it together, they were like, you should actually like be on stage with us. So we figured out a way for me to like go up on the stage for one number and do a performance with them. That led to, by the next show, I got someone else to run the soundboard, and I was a full part of the show. So awesome. Yeah, super fun. Like so we were like old school burlesque. We were not the neo burlesque, which was kind of in a revival at the time. So we weren't doing striptease. We weren't just trying to show off, standardized body images. We were telling stories with each skit. We were using pretty much all electro-clash feminist music from women producers and artists. And doing this in St. Louis, we also took it on tour a couple times. We actually played in Cincinnati one time to like 10 people, cool. At the Southgate House. And Columbus, went to Philadelphia, went to Baltimore, played at a cathedral in Baltimore, which was hilarious because it was our most, we had included for the first time a skit that was one of our most sexually controversial skits, and we were playing in an old cathedral that the anarchists of Baltimore had bought. It was the first show there.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, we were just having fun with it, presenting different body types and sexualizing them, and just really, again, like just trying to break down shame around bodies and sexualities and genders. And so like my skit that I wrote, which was my kind of prayer, like in high school, I was gay. I was out as gay from when I was 16. I was also a born-again Christian, which I don't think you were ever into that, but I was part of this whole Young Life group, and
I think I went to a few of those things along the way, but yeah, I wasn't really quite into it.
That was like really core for me for a few years, and they kind of ended up throwing me out because I was out and proud as gay. I was not sexually active because I was still kind of in this like heteronormative stage of like trying to be a good gay Christian, and so like not sexually active, even though like so many other of the Christians in the group were sexually active. But I was attacked by the leadership of the group Young Life for being proud of being okay with being gay and like wanting to find a husband and have a like monogamous relationship for the rest of my life with a husband. A lot of that's changed since then, but
I think it's fascinating to think about being gay in high school. Like you could have a sleepover with one of your friends, and it's like it's just you and dude in the room, and you can go at it all night, and the mom and dad or whatever, they don't freaking care. But like if I had a girl come over and spend the night in my house, they'd be like, you need to sleep in a different room.
And the funny thing was, I mean, there was some of our girlfriends' parents who they knew I was gay, so they actually had a later curfew if they were out with me, as opposed to if they were out with someone else.
Oh, that's funny.
Because they're like, oh, like nothing's gonna happen with him.
Yeah.
But
that's funny.
Yes. So, yeah, after we were performing after Jerry Falwell died, and so I wrote a skit where I was Jesus and Mary Magdalene was at the well, and she gives me, so I give her a drink from the well. She turns into kind of this dominatrix, and we start having a little kinky BDSM scene. But then Jerry Falwell comes along and it makes us ashamed and like brings money into the whole thing and chases her away. But then like I end up giving Jerry Falwell a drink from my well at the end, and he just keels over and dies from that. So a little resolution there. So that was my prayer, was like to get rid of shame, take money out of religion, which is so dominated by, to like go back to like kind of some of our intuition and feeling good about ourselves. And hope everyone brings that into their lives every day, and gets in touch with the natural world. That's so cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I definitely remember a moment in high school. I don't know if you remember it, but you came up and kissed me.
Nope, don't remember it.
Yeah, I think you might have been toasted. It was like at a party somewhere. And I was like, no thanks, Art. And you're like, okay, Andrew.
I don't remember that at all.
Well, we were having a good time, so.
Yeah, well, I did have a few crushes here and there.
Yeah. All right, so one other thing here. Art, tell us about your popcorn business.
Yeah, so I also run Green Thumb Popcorn, which is a super small business, but we sell popcorn in Whole Foods all throughout the Florida region. So we make about 30,000 units every year and sell them. You can also order it online, and it's like a superfood popcorn, all organic, and it's delicious. One is spicy with spirulina and cayenne.
Ooh, so it's actually green.
Yeast, and the other one is the new flavor is called the Golden Touch, and it's got maple syrup and monk fruit and turmeric. So we really try to like pack in some different like superfoods, they are from all over the world. So it's kind of funny, I fell into this running it with a friend. She passed on the business to me, And, I've been maintaining it and trying to grow it. It's nice to have this totally different experience with kind of the whole commercial food industry and grocery stores, like the crazy bureaucracy involved with that. Like, I have to plan a year out for anything to change in these grocery stores, which is just wild because I don't plan more than a few weeks out for anything. So it's been a really interesting, different experience.
Well, it's nice to hear that's popping up for you.
So people can check that out at greenthumbpopcorn.com, and also check out the nonprofit website urbanoasisproject.org for more about all the different things that we do to get people fed, get the nutritious foods out to all kinds of different people.
Incredible. Yeah, thanks. I'm gonna get some popcorn. Well, it's been really good catching up. Yeah, if I'm in Miami, which I wouldn't mind being someday, I'll definitely look you up and we'll go eat some crazy fruit.
Yeah, we got plenty, especially in the summer. So it's fruit season now, coming up through the summer. So that's what we live on all summer long, is all the fruits and the herbs.
Awesome.
And weird tropical greens.
Really appreciate you.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day.
Yeah, give it up to Art, Mother Farming Friedrick in the house, Miami. What's up? Come on, give it up. Keep listening to this podcast. Explore the other episodes. Have fun. Stay tuned. There'll be more coming from the Mother Farming Elf.